If you're listening to this, please subscribe and stay tuned, because what I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's my life. My name is Daniel Morgan, I'm 34 years old, and until a few weeks ago, I was just a regular guy. I work as a maintenance engineer at a hydroelectric plant in a small Canadian town. I've never been into conspiracy theories, never cared much for ghost stories, and definitely never thought UFOs were real. But now I don't know what to think because something out there, something I can't explain, has been following me. It all started on a Tuesday evening. I had just finished a late shift at the plant. The drive home was routine. Empty roads, pine trees on either side, the occasional deer in the distance. I usually kept the radio on low, just to break the silence. But that night, my car stereo suddenly picked up a strange frequency. It wasn't static. It was more like a humming, a low vibrating sound that made the rearview mirror tremble slightly. I tapped the console, thinking maybe the signal was bad, but the humming only grew stronger. Then, for a moment, all the lights on my dashboard went out. My car didn't stall, but it felt like something had drained the power for a split second. When the lights came back, I glanced up and froze. Just above the tree line, maybe 50 meters ahead, there was a light. Not like a plane's light, and not like any helicopter I'd ever seen. It was too bright, almost like a sphere of white fire, hovering perfectly still. My first thought was that maybe it was some kind of drone, but this was the middle of nowhere, and the size of it, easily as wide as a truck, ruled that out fast. I slowed down, my palms sweating against the steering wheel. The sphere didn't move at first, and I almost convinced myself it was nothing. But then it tilted, like it had noticed me, and started to glide above the road. It wasn't fast, not yet. It just kept ahead of me, like it was waiting. Against every instinct in my body, I kept driving. I can't explain why. Maybe it was shock, maybe curiosity, but I followed it. After about a kilometer, the light suddenly shot upwards into the sky, gone in less than a second. I slammed the brakes, sitting there in the dark, my heartbeat so loud I could hear it in my ears. I thought it was over. I told myself it was a trick of the eyes, some kind of atmospheric phenomenon, anything but what it looked like. When I finally got home, I didn't mention it to anyone. Not to my coworkers, not to my girlfriend, not even to myself, really. I went to bed that night convincing myself I'd imagined it. But the next day, things got worse. At the plant, while I was checking the turbines, I felt it again, that same humming vibration. This time, it wasn't the radio. It was in the walls, in the metal around me, like something was resonating deep inside the building. My colleagues didn't notice. Or maybe they did and brushed it off, I don't know. But for me, it was undeniable. And then, during lunch, when I stepped outside for air, I saw it again. The light, not as close as before, but hovering in the distance, just above the ridge line beyond the river. It didn't move. It just stayed there, watching. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like someone was standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me. At around 3 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of the humming again. This time it was inside my house. The walls vibrated gently. The glasses in the kitchen rattled. I grabbed a flashlight and went to check, heart racing. When I looked out the window, there it was, hovering right above my backyard. The same blinding sphere, humming like it was alive. And I swear to you, as impossible as it sounds, I saw shapes moving inside that light. Silhouettes. Human-like, but not. I dropped the flashlight and stumbled back. My whole body felt paralyzed, not because they did anything to me, at least not yet, but because I couldn't process it. The moment I blinked, the light was gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, it hasn't left me alone. From the moment I saw that light above my backyard, something changed in me. An animal awareness, a sense that whatever was out there had closed a mental distance and learned how to wait. The next day at work, I tried to keep my routine, to act like nothing had happened. I ran meters and checked valves, I logged readings, I joked with Tom about the cafeteria coffee, but every metal rail, every humming transformer reminded me of that frequency. At noon, my phone vibrated with a message from my sister. She lives 2 towns over, asking if I'd picked up on the weird radio interference people were posting about online. I hadn't checked. I didn't want to feed the idea. But when I pulled the car onto the river road that evening, the sky was clear and the world ordinary in a way that hurt. The light was back, further now, over the old quarry where they used to film commercials. This time, it descended slowly, almost shyly, settling inches above the cracked asphalt. I stopped the car and watched, and as I watched, the hair on my arms lifted with static. The air tasted metallic, like after a lightning strike. The thing emitted a smell I couldn't place. Not sulfur, not ozone. Something cold and clinical. I remembered thinking, absurdly, that the engineers at work would have loved to measure that field. Then the sound changed. The humming became layered, like someone switching harmonics, and my car radio, every device, filled with a single coherent tone that seemed to translate into a pattern behind my eyes. I felt dizzy, not from movement but from information being impressed on me. My hands trembled, and when I reached for the door handle, my fingers wouldn't obey. It was as if the simplest motor functions had to be renegotiated through something else. For a second, panic flared, sharp and useless. Then something else happened. A pressure, like diving underwater, but from everywhere at once, and the gravel beneath my tires rose in a slow, deliberate way until I felt the car floating. I remember the surreal detail of watching a small pebble slide off the hood and hang in the air beside the driver's side mirror. I remember the smell of the upholstery, the feel of the steering wheel leather beneath my palms as it went weightless. My mouth opened to shout and no sound left. The world narrowed to a tunnel of light and humming and that odd sense of being examined. Then my vision tunneled into brightness and there was no road, no quarry, only a wash of color and shapes moving like jellyfish in a current. I don't have a tidy sentence to describe the moment after that. Time condensed and stretched. My sense of minutes lost their edges. When something like a voice registered, it wasn't through air but inside my head, calm, curious, and entirely without words that matched what I know as language. It asked nothing and answered less, like a recorder trying different playback speeds. I tried to think of my mother, of the plant, of Lydia, my girlfriend, and images slid through my consciousness with no control, memories like film strips being threaded through a projector. There was no malice, at least not as I can remember. There was assessment, an anatomy of me displayed and taken in. The rhythm of my heartbeat, the scent of my sweat, the tiny scar on my left knee from when I fell off my bike at 11. Then, as suddenly as the pressure began, a cold clarity settled. I was not just suspended. I was moving through a tunnel of suspended light, and my last coherent thought before the memory fuzzed completely was that this is not what any human machine could build. When I woke up, I was on the ground beside my car, the hood cold under my palm, the quarry silent and ordinary, and the sky empty except for trembling stars. My watch read 37 minutes forward from the last time I remembered checking it. My phone battery, drained to nothing, blinked back to life with several missed calls and a string of unread messages from Lydia asking if I'd stopped answering because I was angry or because something was wrong. I called her, voice hoarse. She answered with that small alarm in it that made me ache. I lied, said I'd fallen asleep in the car, said I was tired from overtime. She believed me because she wanted to, and because I said it with enough conviction that even I began to believe it for a minute. But that night changes came quicker. I started noticing marks, small, pale impressions on my forearm, like the pattern of some tiny mesh. They weren't painful, and at first I convinced myself they were insect bites. Then, while shaving in the bathroom mirror 3 nights later, I realized the hair on the right side of my head was thinner in a semicircle that matched one of the impressions. I took pictures, then deleted them because documentation felt like betrayal, like inviting proof to ruin whatever normal life I had left. I tried to keep working, but sleep became impossible. I would nap in the afternoon and wake convinced I had been awake the whole time. At times, I would find myself staring at the ceiling in the plant's break room, aware that someone else was watching me through a light I could not see. The colleagues who noticed chalked it up to stress. The union rep told me to take a few days off. I refused. Being home felt dangerous and exposed, a place where silence let whatever it was creep closer. Then, about a week after the first encounter, I stopped being a passive object of observation. I woke at dawn to the smell again, a clinical cold that filled the bedroom. Lydia was still asleep, her hair a dark pillow against the sheets. The windows were open though I'd shut them before bed. The humming filled the apartment, low and patient. I slipped out of bed, not awake enough to rationalize, and moved toward the window. The street lamp outside flickered and went out at the same instant the light pooled in the alley behind the building. It was closer now, so close I could feel the pressure change in my sinuses. Before I could collect myself, there was a moment like glass cracking across the right side of my vision. A sudden lattice of white, and then hands or light-formed appendages touched my wrists. They were cool and precise, not human to touch, as if friction had been engineered out of them. I remember thinking absurdly to be polite. If you're going to take me, be gentle. There was no answer, only a movement, and then the world peeled away again. I didn't scream this time. My voice seemed to have been catalogued and set aside. The last thing I saw before the bedroom ceiling dissolved into a bright, featureless plane was Lydia's silhouette on the pillow, the slow rise and fall of her back. I remember loving her in that impossible, squeezed way that comes when everything is about to change. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in my bedroom, or even anywhere I recognized. The world was a vast expanse of soft, diffused light, as if the air itself was glowing from within. There was no floor, no walls, only subtle undulations in the brightness that suggested structure but didn't define it. My body felt different, lighter, almost weightless, yet fully aware. I tried to move my hands and legs, and they responded, but the sensation was wrong. Not numb, exactly, but as if my muscles were no longer mine entirely. I looked around, trying to orient myself, and that's when I noticed them. Figures. Humanoid, vaguely familiar in shape, but elongated, their limbs too long, their movements fluid in a way humans could never achieve. Their faces, or what I interpreted as faces, were featureless, smooth planes, yet I felt a presence behind them, like a network of consciousness that I could sense more than see. One of them approached. I felt it before I saw it clearly, a vibration along my nervous system, a mental hum that carried the oddest emotion. Curiosity. Not malice, not friendliness, just inquiry. Then it touched my forehead, not physically, at least not in the way I understand touch, but in my mind. Information poured in, not words but flashes, sensations, concepts I couldn't articulate. I saw my life, the turbine room, the river road, the small apartment. I saw patterns of light, grids, energy flows. And then, most disturbingly, I saw myself from outside myself, like an observer in a recording, feeling fear and wonder at once. I realized they were studying me, cataloging, learning. There was a rhythm, almost musical, to it, a sequence of impressions that seemed to both calm and destabilize me. And then, a thought, clear and simple, not spoken. You are ready. I had no idea what it meant. Ready for what? Ready for where? I wanted to speak, to ask, to move, but my body had its own pace now, dictated by whatever force controlled this environment. A light pulse spread outward from the figure, and suddenly I was elsewhere. I was in a place that resembled my hometown at night. Empty streets, a cold wind, but everything was exaggerated. Buildings stretched taller, shadows moved unnaturally, and the stars were wrong, too bright, too close. I realized I could walk through this world without touching the ground. The sensation was terrifyingly familiar at the same time. I encountered more of them, figures slipping in and out of the edges of my perception, never fully present but always observing. My mind raced, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with logic. Could it be a dream? A hallucination? No, my memories of pain, of car rides, of Lydia were too vivid, too real. This was something else, something I could not define. Then came the voices, if you could call them that. A chorus of thoughts, not coherent words but feelings and commands, tugging at me. One sequence felt like instruction. Observe, learn, remember. Another, sharper, almost urgent. Do not fear. I tried to understand what I was meant to remember. Was it them or me? The world around me shifted again. Faster now. A series of images flashing in front of my eyes. Rivers, forests, city streets, faces I knew, and faces I didn't. I felt dizzy, nauseated, my own memories colliding with these new impressions. At one point, a scene froze. Lydia, asleep in our bed, a tear on her cheek as if she had dreamed of me being gone. My chest tightened, the mental pressure building. The figures, if they could be called that, responded to my tension, and I felt a strange reassurance, a subtle shift that said, "It is temporary." I tried to cling to that thought, but before I could grasp it fully, the landscape changed again. Now I was above the earth, seeing it as a whole, oceans and forests, cities and lights, spinning gently in the void. I felt small, infinitesimal, yet paradoxically important, as if my existence was a thread in a vast network I had never imagined. I wanted to speak, to call out, but my voice no longer existed. I wanted to move, to struggle, but my body only followed their rhythm. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the light condensed, the figures withdrew, and I found myself back in my car. The night was calm, the road empty. My hands were trembling on the wheel, my breath shallow and rapid. Everything looked the same, yet I knew it was not. Something had changed inside me, something I could not name. I checked my watch. Exactly 23 minutes had passed. No more, no less. My phone buzzed with missed calls from Lydia, worried messages piling up. I started the car and drove home, every nerve alive, aware that whatever had taken me, whatever had observed me, was still out there. And I was certain it wasn't done. Over the next days, the light returned intermittently. Sometimes it hovered outside my bedroom window, other times along the river road, but never in the same way as before. I began noticing subtle changes in myself. Sharper reflexes, heightened senses, moments where I knew things before they happened. The world seemed more vibrant, edges clearer, sounds richer. And with these gifts came a constant, gnawing anxiety, the knowledge that I was being watched, assessed, catalogued. The figures had vanished from my immediate perception, but I could feel their presence in the quiet moments. An undercurrent, a pulse beneath my skin, a hum in the air around me. That pulse became my new reality. I began keeping a journal, writing every detail, every shift in perception, every appearance of the light. But words were never enough. I tried to tell Lydia, but how could I explain hovering spheres, mental communication, weightless travel? She smiled politely, concerned but skeptical, and I stopped trying. I had to survive, and survival meant silence. One night, as I stepped outside for air, I saw the light again, closer than ever, almost at eye level. I froze, feeling the vibration in my bones. This time, a shadow emerged from the light, a more defined shape than before, humanoid but impossibly tall. And then, as if sensing my anticipation, it tilted its head, and I understood. This was not random. This was deliberate. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of whatever plan they had for me, and I realized I was standing on the edge of a journey I could not refuse and could never prepare for. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen under the street lamp, the air vibrating like a living thing. The light drew closer, soft but impossibly bright, until I could feel it pressing against my skin without touching it. Then the figure stepped fully into view. It wasn't terrifying, not in the way movies depict aliens. It was uncanny, impossibly precise, symmetrical, a perfect biological geometry that made every human instinct wobble. Its limbs stretched long and fluid, its head slightly elongated, skin pale but not sickly, more like a polished surface reflecting the world around it. I could feel its gaze, or maybe it was thought, scanning me in a way that bypassed sight entirely. The humming in the air intensified, forming a rhythm I could almost follow, a cadence that seemed to match my heartbeat. And then, in a way I can only describe as mental, it spoke. Not with words, but a feeling that translated into a voice inside my head. You are ready. Come. I hesitated. Every survival instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to do anything but comply. But another part of me, curiosity, understanding, fear of the unknown, pulled me forward. And somehow, stepping toward that light felt like the only option, like standing still would break me in half. The moment I moved, gravity itself seemed to bend, my feet barely touching the asphalt as the air thickened, then cleared. The world around me dissolved into the same diffused brightness I'd felt the first time. I was weightless, suspended, aware of my body yet free of it, moving without moving. The figure was there, guiding me, and I felt the pulsing rhythm again, the mental probing that was now strangely comforting. It wasn't examining me with cruelty, it was teaching me to understand, to see through the limitations of human senses. Scenes unfolded before me like a living tapestry. Cities and forests, oceans and skies, human lives interwoven with patterns I couldn't name. I saw how the light traveled, how energy flowed, how every movement carried consequence. Time was no longer linear. I glimpsed my past, my present, my possible futures simultaneously. And through it all, the figure remained beside me, patient and infinitely aware. Then came a question or a prompt, in that wordless voice. Will you remember? I understood immediately. This was a choice. I could return, retain only fragments, forget the impossible truths, and live the rest of my life in ignorance. Or I could carry the full weight of what I had seen, bear knowledge that would isolate me from everyone I knew. My mind raced. I thought of Lydia, my family, my friends, the life I had built. I thought of the pulsing light, the figures, the travel beyond comprehension. I realized the price of knowing, and I said yes. The figure pulsed gently in response, and the world condensed. I felt every fiber of my being rearranging, integrating knowledge, senses, and awareness far beyond my human capacity. My body became a vessel for perception I could barely comprehend. Then, in a single breathless moment, I was back. My feet were on asphalt. The street lamp dimmed. The night ordinary, quiet. The light hovered for a heartbeat, then shot upward into the sky, gone as suddenly as it had arrived. My car, my neighborhood, my life, they were all as they had been, yet nothing was the same. I felt the pulse beneath my skin, a subtle vibration in the air, a constant reminder that I was marked, changed. I looked at my hands, at my reflection in a car window, at the stars. I could see patterns I couldn't name, hear frequencies I couldn't translate, feel threads of connection that no human should perceive. I had survived. I had returned. And I understood, with a clarity both exhilarating and terrifying. I was no longer just Daniel Morgan. I was something else, and the world would never be ordinary again. Since that night, I've been careful. I go to work, I drive the same roads, I speak to Lydia, but every moment is underlain with awareness. Sometimes the light appears, brief, teasing, almost a greeting, almost a reminder. And I know, without a doubt, that they are out there, watching, waiting, and that one day they may return. When they do, I will be ready. So if you're watching this, subscribe and remember what you think you know about the world, about the night sky, about reality itself. It may be nothing, and you might not be prepared for what's really out there.